Welcome to the Shootin' Show. I'm Johnny Rowland, your host, and I think we have another great show for you. We have some interesting guests. We're going to continue our interview with Bill Jordan, and we have a number of other things I think you'll really find interesting. So without further ado, let's let another Shootin' Show begin. Now, friends, in my right hand, I'm holding the little Astra A70, and to give you an idea of just what a small gun it is, I have our Ruger SP101, which you'll see on another segment. In fact, we're not going to test it here today, but this is a small handgun. It has a 2 1/4 inch or so barrel, and you can see they're very similar. In fact, these two guns are two of the most potent packages for their size that I'm aware of. You have, of course, the 9-shot 9mm Astra A70, and of course this Ruger SP101 is in .357 Magnum. And believe me, this gun gets its own segment at another time. But what we're going to look at today, of course, is the little Astra. And you can see it's about the same size, I suppose, as our Colt officer's model, or maybe even a little bit smaller. It is really a small handgun to be in the full charge 9mm chambering. Now what we have, it is a single action. That means that, of course, the hammer must be cocked. The trigger will not cock the hammer. You have to do that yourself or do it by cycling the slide. And it has a safety comparable to the 1911 Colt. Now this gun does not have a grip safety on the back strap such as our 1911. And as we saw a moment ago, since you don't have that grip safety, personally, I would prefer to carry this little gun, one with the you can carry it with the chamber empty and hammer down, or the hammer down, and of course the safety won't come on. But if you want to carry a live round in the chamber, having this gun cocked and the safety on makes me just a little bit nervous, because since you don't have that grip safety. So personally, I would carry this gun either with chamber empty, or, and very carefully, we have to lower that hammer over a live round. You darn sure don't want it to slip out from under your thumb. But carry this with the hammer down, and then to bring it into use, you can cock the gun in order to get it into action. Now out here on the range, between shooting sessions, then if it's cocked, I will then apply the safety, of course, for safety's sake. But since you don't have that grip safety, I would elect to carry it with the hammer down, or in fact hammer down on an empty chamber. This little gun has shown remarkable accuracy in several hundred rounds that we've shot it. It has functioned extremely well. Astra is not that big a company here. They're not that common here in the United States, but I think that they definitely designate or definitely deserve more attention than they've been getting. Maybe in your particular area you've seen a lot of Astras, but here in northwest Louisiana, I don't see that many in hands of shooters. But that is no a reflection on the quality of the gun or anything else, because this particular sample looks to be awfully good. We have really enjoyed shooting it. But you can shoot these guns extremely fast, and most of you know that I'm not that great a fan of the 9mm chambering. However, there is one cartridge which really changes the characteristics of the 9mm bullet, and that is the Corbin loading. And this particular Corbin bullet, which is a 115 grain jacketed hollow point, exits the muzzle of this little Astra A70 at almost 1,300 feet per second. So it is definitely hot, hot, hot in a small gun like this. Your typical standard 9mm chambering, such as this cartridge is a Winchester silver tip, again 115 grains. It leaves the muzzle of this gun at just under 1,100 feet a second. That particular lot does anyway, and it's still a powerful chambering, a powerful cartridge for this small a gun. But believe me, friends, this Corbin is a horse of another whole different color. These are plus P ratings or plus P plus, and I'm not sure that I'd want to shoot a steady diet of the Corbin loading through this small gun. I don't know what the durability is on these guns. I wouldn't shoot them all the time, but as far as a carry load, yes, I wouldn't think twice about it because they work really well in the gun, and it puts the 9mm up approaching a .357 Magnum in power. So that's this carbine ammunition is something we really recommend, and we're going to be doing some tests on several different carbine loadings soon. Anyway, back to our Astra A70. Let's load the gun, and of course we'll do that by putting a magazine in the base like so, and we know it's empty. Be sure it's firmly seated all the way in. We'll pull the slide back like so, and remember, let it go, and for our purposes we're going to apply the safety. We're not going to let the hammer down. So let's shoot the little Astra A70 and let you see what it looks like in rapid fire. Now then, friends, let's shoot our little Astra A70 with the 9mm ball ammunition, which is the full metal jacket 9mm, and you'll watch, it really doesn't have much recoil. It can really be shot fast, so let's take a look at it. Well, that's a pretty fast 8 shots, and of course the slide's locked back. It has told us it is ready to be reloaded. So again, our functioning has been 100% with this little Astra A70, and one that really I think deserves a lot more attention than they've gotten in the past. So it's one that I can recommend, at least from our experience with this gun, one that I can recommend completely. So let's shoot some steel targets with it and let you look at it. Now friends, I was saying a moment ago, this little Astra A70 is definitely a serious handgun. It would be an excellent backup gun, but I tell you what, it's not a bad first gun once you become familiar with how it works. Well, let's shoot our steel targets here. Of course, we'll apply our safety. The Astra A70 and 9mm, an all steel gun, steel frame, steel slide, performs very well for us, and one that you probably should take a look at if you're looking for a small but powerful semi-automatic pistol.
When anti-hunters plant poison dog food in your favorite hunting spot,
you'll say, where's the NRA?
When they spike your access roads,
you'll say, where's the NRA?
And when they ban your hunting guns, you'll say, where was the NRA?
Join the NRA now to protect your hunting heritage and defeat the anti-hunting agenda.
When they close the seasons in your hunting lands,
you'll say, where's the NRA?
Help protect the hunter's heritage of wildlife conservation. Join the NRA.
Call now and get a year of great magazines, a no-fee Visa card, a Hunter Orange NRA cap, special insurance benefits, plus access to world-class hunter safety and skills training.
You see, when hunting is gone forever, your son won't ask, where was the NRA? He'll ask, where were you?
Where were you?
Where were you? Where were you?
So come on, join the NRA now.
Now friends, what we have, and of course we're trying to feature more and more women because we have a lot of women who watch our program each week, and certainly for instruction, because a lot of women now are buying guns and handguns especially, and they don't know where to go and get instruction. So from time to time we're going to be doing things with women, because you know what, you ladies out there, you can shoot guns just as well as the men can, in some cases a lot better. You know, typically women and kids are a lot easier to teach than a lot of men are, because men have the John Wayne, and I'm a great fan of John Wayne, nobody write me on that. I'm a great fan of John Wayne. However, a lot of men have what we call the John Wayne syndrome of thinking that a man ought to be born knowing how to shoot a gun. Well, believe me, shooting a firearm has nothing to do with anyone's gender or their manhood or anything else. It's simply a matter of skill and training and paying attention. And you know, many times women, they're used to working in the kitchen. They handle sharp knives. Those that work at the office are used to working on computers and typewriters and things. They have excellent dexterity in their fingers and hands. So women typically are easy to teach how to shoot a gun. Now you'll notice, of course, you know me, I've always got eye protection and hearing protection here on the range. And that's something that we need to do every time we go and shoot, because gunfire, especially out of handguns, on a continuing basis, will decrease your hearing ability. So all of us You know, you don't want to come to the range and go home hurting in your ears or your eyes or anywhere else for that matter. So Tricia has already put her earmuffs on, and she has safety glasses, and she's going to be shooting a new Smith & Wesson 617 today. And we do thank our good friends at Smith & Wesson. We're in their gun loan program, and they do furnish us with firearms to be tested and used on our program, and we do appreciate that. They're some fine people. So Tricia, what we're going to do is, this is a new gun to you. You haven't shot this particular gun before. Now, previously you have shot a semi-automatic pistol, a couple of different kinds, and I think one revolver. So our drill is going to be the same. Now, we've already run through our dry firing practice, and since this is a 22, we're not going to dry fire a 22 caliber revolver. But our mechanics remain the same. We're going to point the gun at the target. We're going to find our front sight in the center of our rear sight here. And friends, let me tell you what, many times when a new shooter is starting out, let's don't put the target out at 25 yards. And the majority of the time when a lady would have to defend herself, it's going to be closer than this. So let's let a new shooter start up close somewhere so they can see where they're hitting on the target. Now then, friends, Tricia is right-handed, so she's going to take the gun, of course, in her right hand. She's going to push with her right hand, and she's going to gently but firmly pull back with her left hand. And it's placed right underneath the gun, and I believe it's going to be a comfortable shooting stance for her. Now then, Tricia, hold it out. All right, now then, put your finger on the trigger. Okay. You won't have shifter out. It's okay, we can edit. All right. You're going to have to put your hand a little bit further, right? You want the first pad of your finger right here on the trigger. It's not going to have any recoil at all. Put your thumb in there. Okay. Put in the center hole. All right, now then, gently pull it through. Just pull it through. It's all right. Good. And do it again. You're doing it. Good. And 6 times, of course. And of course, she had one out of the circle, but it's still a good hit. And this is the first time that she had ever picked that gun up. Now, you see, ladies, you can do it. And in other segments, we're going to be moving on to different ranges, but the 22 is such a great gun to start with. It is not intimidating, didn't hurt your ears or your hands, and it's such a great gun to train and teach people with. And believe me, with the hollow point or like Stinger, CCI Stingers in these guns, they become pretty effective defensive guns if that's what you need them for. Because remember that old saying, a hit with a 22 beats a miss with a 50 Browning. So Tricia, we appreciate you coming down today. And I tell you what, I think you're enjoying. We had her shoot a 44 Magnum a little earlier, and I think she liked it. She jumped a little bit, but I think she really enjoyed it.
Thank you, John.
Stay tuned for more of the Shootin' Show after this break for your local cable company or television station. And now, friends, we're very pleased to present this week's feature from Lieutenant Colonel Art Alphin, retired formerly of West Point. You know, Art is now head of the great A-Square Company, and A-Square builds some of the finest high-powered rifles and ammunition available in the world today. For more information on A-Square and their products, you can write to them at A-Square 1 Industrial Park, Bedford, Kentucky. The zip code is 40006, or you can give them a call at area 502-255-7456.
In the 21 years between the world wars, many nations devoted a great deal of effort to new machine gun designs. Their hope was to have a machine gun that would be more mobile than the water-cooled and yet give up as few of its advantages as possible. I do not want to cover the history of weapons development during those 21 years. Instead, I'll compare two designs, the MG-34 and the BAR. I'll cover the characteristics which resulted from their design and then show how each army incorporated that weapon into its tactical organization and doctrine. According to this chart, one would say that the MG-34, with its higher volume of fire, is obviously the superior weapon. Well, I'm not so sure. Let's take a look. This is the German MG-34. It weighs 26.5 pounds and can be carried by one man. It feeds from this metallic, non-disintegrating belt. This belt must be recovered by the crew and reloaded with ammunition after use. Unlike the Maxim and Browning cloth belts, these belts lay on top of the cartridges in the feedway. The bolt drives the cartridge forward, down, and out of the belt into the chamber. The weapon operates on the short recoil principle, which you have seen before. It does not have water cooling, so it employs two other things in order to dissipate the heat generated by sustained fire. First, it fires from the open bolt so that when the weapon is not actually firing, air can circulate through the barrel. Secondly, it has a quick change barrel. When a barrel becomes overheated, it need only be exchanged for a cool one. The MG-34 and BAR will make the same target run. When displacing between engagements, 3 surprise targets will appear at 50 yards. Some disadvantages of the MG-34 become immediately apparent. Though the weapon can be carried by one man, it is not single-man portable. That high volume of fire is predicated upon the quick-change barrel for dissipation of heat. There has to be an assistant gunner for carrying spare barrels in the spare parts kit. At the volume of fire shown on the chart, the crew has to change the barrel once every minute. Since it consumes more ammunition, an ammo bearer is needed. It takes a while for the crew to get the weapon into and out of position. You saw the confusion as the emergency targets were initially engaged by the assistant gunner with his rifle. He knew the machine gun simply couldn't open fire in time. Since our targets don't actually kill people, the crew then went ahead and engaged them with the MG-34. This weapon can be fired in an emergency, as you see in this photograph. I'm not so sure, however, that I would like to be the assistant gunner who carries it over my shoulder while the gunner behind me blazes away. The MG-34 was difficult to control. You should have noticed that it had a large beaten zone. The extremely high cyclic rate, over 800 rounds per minute, does not help this. Since it is a short recoil weapon, nearly 1/3 the weight of the weapon is moving after every shot, making it even more difficult to control and recoil. However, this is what the German wanted, for in the squad he saw the MG-34 as an area suppression weapon. Another disadvantage of its high cyclic rate is that the part velocity is higher. If the bolt has to travel backward and forward 800 times per minute rather than, say, 500 times per minute, then the bolt's acceleration and deceleration at the beginning of each forward and back motion is that much more violent and abrupt. This breaks parts and places a premium on clean, high-quality ammunition. Partway through engaging the first set of targets, the MG-34 extractor tore through a cartridge case. The crew had to change barrels in order to continue. Normally, one of the assistant gunners would have used the toolkit to clear that barrel. Otherwise, the barrels were changed only when overheated. Wherever possible, the Germans set up the machine gun on the tripod. This helped stabilize the weapon and gave it a smaller beaten zone. Further, its traversing and elevating mechanism aided in the adjustment of long-range fire. The tripod was a heavy, clumsy affair, but it was always carried with the machine gun. You do not see German combat photography of the MG-34 without a tripod or an observer with binoculars to assist in the adjustment of long-range fire. This is the proper way to employ a crew-served weapon. The gunner adjusts sights, aims, and fires the weapon, and the assistant gunner keeps it working. Somebody else must spot the fall of the rounds. Without this, the effective range of the machine gun is no more than 1,000 yards. Secondly, you will never see German soldiers carrying belts of machine gun ammunition festooned across their chests like the Frito Bandito. They always carried their ammunition in the can and fed it directly from the can into the machine gun. This kept the ammo clean and the belts free of rust and was essential for reliable operation. The MG-34 pays a price for its volume of fire. With its spare barrels and tripod, it weighs roughly 3/4 what a water-cooled machine gun weighed. It is slow to place in position. It still takes a 4-man crew to carry it and extract from it its potential volume of fire and combat range. To a German, none of this was a disadvantage. His tactical organization was based on this machine gun. This is the breakdown of the German squad. It is plain that the German squad was designed for fire and movement. The machine gun would lay down a base of fire. While it was suppressing the enemy, the remainder of the squad would maneuver about, and when the range was proper, they would go in with grenades, rifle fire, and the bayonet. This is the system that took Ibn Emal and Paris and got to the banks of the Volga River. The Browning automatic rifle of World War II was a beefed up and bipod-equipped version of the BAR of World War I. The BAR weighs 18 pounds with its bipod and feeds from a 20-round, detachable, staggered, double-column box magazine. It does not have a quick-change barrel, though it does fire from the open bolt in order to help cool the weapon. It is equipped with a bipod to help stabilize the weapon during automatic fire from the prone position. The selector switch gave two different cyclic rates of fire, 500 rounds per minute and 350 rounds per minute, both of them fully automatic. Let's see what the BAR can do with the same target array that you saw before. It is quite obvious that the BAR does not have the sustained volume of fire of the MG34. However, a couple of other things are equally obvious. The BAR can truly be carried and operated by one man. The weapon can be put in action as fast as any individual infantryman's rifle. It is certainly as accurate as the MG34 when fired from the bipod. Its lower cyclic rate of fire and a few other characteristics reduce movement of the weapon during firing, and the beaten zone is relatively small. On a suppression target, the BAR was slightly less capable. A well-trained gunner could still put rounds in the target area and still kill or suppress the individuals there. However, he only had 20 rounds to do the job, and there was a distinct break in firing for changing magazines. Because it is a fixed barrel weapon, the volume of fire must be voluntarily held down. The weapon can be fired at more than 80 rounds per minute, but if it is, the barrel will rapidly overheat. Severe overheating burns out the barrel and may even warp the receiver. All of these disadvantages made little difference. The American squad was not primarily organized around the BAR. It was in the squad in order to beef up the squad's overall volume of fire. If the squad wanted to, it could of course use the BAR as a suppression weapon and maneuver about it. But the BAR was never really intended to operate separately from the remaining members of the squad and never intended as a general purpose weapon. At platoon, company, and battalion level, other machine guns, the Browning air-cooled, the Browning water-cooled, and the Browning 50 caliber heavy barrel were present in order to fill the suppression role or the base of fire role. When the American squad did maneuver against the enemy under the covering fire of platoon or company level machine guns, then the squad's semi-automatic Garand rifles and the BAR gave them a great advantage over a German squad. Not only was the squad's volume of fire much higher, but if the maneuvering squad was caught in a position where they needed long-range automatic fire, they still had a weapon that could get the job done. Each weapon, the BAR and the MG-34, had its own very unique set of characteristics, advantages, and disadvantages. Each weapon, when woven into the tactical organization and when coupled with the fire of other weapons, contributed to the success of their respective armies. Which is better? Neither. The intelligent leader used these weapons in concert with his other weapons in order to make an unbeatable team. The design trade-offs which you saw here are not unlike the design trade-offs in weapons which you use today. The basic concepts for the use of these weapons have not changed. The German soldier properly employed his MG-34 during World War II, and the American properly employed his BAR. We expect the same of you today.
You know, friends, Art was just talking to a group of cadets at West Point when he made that last remark about what we expect of you today. However, we have got to stand up and be counted, because there is legislation going into consideration all over the country now that literally wants to disarm the population of the United States. Now, friends, this is outrageous, but some of these legislators are doing it. So what we need to do is stand up and be counted in the voting booth. And we have got to start writing those letters to congressmen, to senators and representatives on a local and state level and national level. Friends, this is one time that we cannot leave a stone unturned. So right now we want to mention, please join the NRA. If you're not a member, make that call that counts. That number is 1-800-952-8700, and tell them you saw it on the Shootin' Show. The Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or television station. Friends, for the absolute best in monthly shooting magazines, turn to Shooting Times magazine, with all sorts of excellent features on handguns, rifles, shotguns, and black powder by some of your favorite gun writers, such as Dick Metcalf and Rick Jameson and Bill Jordan, just to name a few. Each month you'll find interesting articles on guns, shooting, reloading, and new products for the firearms industry, along with information on pending legislation of interest to all gun owners. For subscription information, call 1-800-727-4353. Shooting Times, the best there is. And speaking of Bill Jordan, the great writer who has written for a number of years for Shooting Times magazine, we're going to continue with some highlights of our interview recently with Bill Jordan. Certainly a hero to many of us out there who are gun enthusiasts, and one of my personal heroes and a good friend. Now, friends, you're seeing a picture of Bill Jordan with an African lion that he shot just a few years ago. It hadn't been that long, at about 12 feet. And he has the rifle handy, and he's going to show it to us and tell us that story on the line in just a moment. Now, Bill, this is the gun you shot that lion with. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, why don't you tell us what the gun is?
Well, it's a Model 70, a pre-64 Model 70, which do you gun people that happen to be watching this would know what I'm talking about on it. And it had been in a 370, it was a 375 H&H caliber. I had it changed to a 375 Mashburn, which adds about 200 feet a second to the velocity of it, and then I thought it made a little better rifle. It's a very accurate rifle, and as you notice, it has a medium heavy barrel, and although it was a super grade to begin with, their super grade model, right. I had it restocked by Reinhard Fagen to fit me just a little bit better, and also I had the barrel chopped off because I got into a couple of little rucuses with buffalo where they were real close, and that long barrel felt like a fishing rod in my hand. Well, this gun is one of my favorites. It's just, if you had to have just one gun for all over the world, from rabbits to elephant, this would have to be the caliber to me.
Well, tell us the story. I know it's in your book on mostly hunting. Tell us the story on the line, if you would.
Well, I was hunting with a group in Botswana, in the Kalahari Desert, and they had all done their hunting. I laid off the line because I had been there at another place, and I remembered that we had not been able to get a permit because the guy that issued the permit would be back in about 3 weeks. That's the way they did things in that. Then I don't know whether it's quite a few years back. Anyhow, I remember that area, and I wanted to go in there to get my line. But a couple of them decided to go with me. Besides the outfitter, he was along too. I'm talking from the States, the one that booked it. And we had 3 trackers, Bushmen and 2 Makatahatas, the name of a native tribe down in there in the Kalahari Desert. And the way that there's several ways you can hunt line. The most common use is to put a bait up and a little blind, and you shoot the line if he comes to the blind. And another one is that you have your safari car go right with you and have trackers. And the last one is to have the safari car quite far behind you, but in sight of you still. And the hunter and the trackers and the professional are up there following the track. This works out very well in the Kalahari Desert. And anyhow, that's the way we were hunting. Now, most of these people won't hunt that way. The professionals won't, because it gets a little woolly. when you follow it right on top of one of them like that, the chances are you irritate him to some extent. Anyhow, we picked up the track of after discarding a couple of smaller tracks, and we picked up one of this big male, and we started out on it, and we had, as I said, we had the 3. Well, the 2 Makatahatas were middle-aged, and the Bushman was little, and they said he was very fast, and also, according to them, the Bushman was highly expendable, and they were not. So he rode in the safari car, which was like an open-air Jeep.
kind of a flatbed type thing.
Flatbed, with nothing, no windshield, no stop, no side, no nothing.
It's kind of sitting up there and they open little rails around it.
The professional and the outfitter was sitting up on the front seat. Me and another white fellow named Johnny Brock from Shreveport was sitting on a little board across the back seat. Plus, in the back of there, all of our gear, sleeping bags, everything, food, so forth, because we went to, some 75 miles away from our base camp, and we're just pushing it overnight. Anyhow, the little one was in the back, and these two were out following, and we stayed right along with it with the safari car, with the idea being that we would get out when it got real tight, real fresh, and get on track. Well, we accidentally jumped him, just like that. Well, he took out one way, and we took out another one. And anyhow, he ran. Well, to make a long story short, we jumped him the third time. And the third time, the first time, after we jumped him, the other two came back, and they got in the vehicle, and they weren't about to be up there. And anyhow, we had the line in practically in view all the time, and we followed the tracks in with the car, and the first thing you know, we figured that we were going to see him or know that he was close, but we did not. We ran into him. And he came from measured about 55 feet from out from under a bush,
right,
in a full charge. Well, before we jumped him that time, every time we'd jump him, we'd follow out running and he'd get away. But these natives, one of them knew how to say right, and another one knew how to say left, and the other one knew how to say straight. And they were yelling that. It was pandemonium. When the lion came,
but the lion had gotten tired of being chased.
He had enough of it.
Lion was gonna settle the score.
He had enough. He had enough. That's and lion got a pretty short fuse anyhow. Anyhow, when he came, the professional slammed on the brakes. A big bedroll went over and took him down over the steering wheel where he was out of it completely. And I was on the right hand side. The natives were on my back climbing me. I was the tallest thing around. So
You're the next best thing to a tree, I guess.
I managed to reach around and get one of them's hand and slung him, and he went plumb out the back end. And the other two, I got their hands in one lick and got rid of them. And all the time this lion is coming. Now they can make 100 yards, they say, in 3 seconds from a standing start.
That's unbelievable.
So you figure how long this took, all
Not
of this.
long.
The Jeep was rocking like this, and these two stand up, and the other lion coming on an angle towards us.
The lion.
I'm blocked off from him, which I think had time to think, well, that's nice. But about that time, here he is on his hind legs. We measured it later at 12 feet. And that lion was overall he was longer than that.
My.
On his hind leg. Certainly, he was sticking way up above that Jeep. Anyhow, they were standing up, and the professional hunter yelled, "Let Bill shoot!" They dropped down, and I shot from the hip.
With a 375.
With a 375. I just shot right from the hip. And with the gun barrel stuck out between those two, and they fall over backwards from the bleed cord, I guess. Anyhow, it knocked him down, and he turned and started to run. I waked the boat and slammed another one into him, and it looked like he went 20 feet straight up in the air, and we hit the ground with it.
My goodness. Now, what you're saying is you, through, and I would imagine all your instinct shooting over the years definitely came into play, and your first shot hit the lion well enough to adjust his attitude where he wanted to go the other way.
He changed his mind. He changed his mind. He figured that it was a little tougher than he had thought. Anyhow, that 375 is a real fine cartridge, and it's one that you can use on most anything. It shoots about like a 30-06 as far as flat is concerned, but it hits with a whole lot more authority.
Well, as you were saying earlier, Bill Jordan's guns are, certainly he takes very fine care of his guns, but you can tell that they have been out there on the trail. I mean, he does use them. I mean, they don't sit at home in the gun cabinet.
That's true, and I don't baby them out there. I don't abuse them, but and if I can, and I'm in a safari car where they would get beat around, I hang on. I feel better with it in my hand anyhow.
Wonder why. That's great. Well, this story is in Bill Jordan's book, Mostly Hunting, and we're going to tell you later on how to get copies of his books. And so I think the next thing we'll do, we're going to look at a favorite shotgun if we can.
Friends, we'll be back with more from Bill Jordan after this 1-minute break for your local cable company or television station.
Well, sir, please tell us about this shotgun. In fact, you might also tell us where you got it.
Well, Johnny, I don't think that I have to say anything to explain to anybody that watching this who Elmer Keith was. And Elmer was my old buddy. He and I hunted together for a whole lot of years. We hunted elk together for 10 years, I know of, and every year in Colorado. But I was visiting at his home once, and he was showing me a whole. He had guns. He really had guns. Racked up like in leather cases, you know, the regular custom leather cases, not saddle scabbards.
Right.
Under beds, all over the place. Double rifles of all and everything. And we went through them, of course, me admiring his guns, and. When we got through looking at them, he said, well, what do you think about them, old buddy? I said, they're all beautiful, but you know, there's just one of them in there that if I had my choice, I'd pick. He said, which one is that? I said, that little greener. He said, you like that little gun? And I said, I sure do. That is a beauty. And he handed over to me. He said, shake hands, old friend, belongs to you.
Well,
yeah.
Isn't that something?
I'll tell you another story about Elmer. There are many stories about him that I could tell you, but the one that I really liked was the night that he got the Outstanding Handgun Award. He got the first one. And Elmer told me, he said, old friend says, stick by me. I just don't know what to say. I said, now Elmer, that's going to be the day when you don't know what to say. Because Elmer was a talker. He really could talk the horns off a billy goat. But he knew.
But he knew what he was saying.
Believe me, he wrote a big book. I forgot who the guy that went with him over there that published the book. But he told me something that I could have told him, that Elmer never kept notes. But he wrote in that book the time of day of every animal that they shot, to what the weather was like, the temperature was like, the gun he had, the load that he used. And he said, this guy said, I took copious notes. I went back and checked him, and he was exactly right on every one of those, and all he had was in his head.
So
over a 2-month safari they were with him.
So he had an unusual, like a photographic memory as far as
absolutely, absolutely.
Isn't that amazing?
Fantastic memory. If it had anything to do with guns.
And you know, something I want to mention since we're talking about Elmer Keith, Bill Jordan knew Elmer very well, and Elmer caught a lot of flack for writing up his 600-yard 44 Magnum pistol shot. And I believe I heard you say one time, if in fact Elmer Keith said it was so, well, it was. Is that correct?
Well, what I said is that I know that Elmer Keith killed that animal at 600 yards because he told me that he did.
Mm-hmm.
Does that explain it?
Well, I think that settles it pretty well.
Okay.
Well, that's great. Well, you know, a lot of people are not aware that you assisted Skeeter Skelton in becoming a gun writer.
Well, not really. Not really. I helped him, though, to get with Shooting Times.
Okay, with Shooting Times.
Yeah.
And we do want to say that the good folks at Shooting Times, Bill is still writing a column for Shooting Times magazine, and they're just terrific people, as both of us will agree on. But tell us a little bit about that, if you.
Well, I had been doing a little bit of writing for Shooting Times. They would ask me to write the other side of something that one of their writers was writing. I was in the Border Patrol. Oh, by the way, you said I was in the Border Patrol and came back to it once. Came back to it twice from the Marines. World War II and Korea. I was called up for both of those.
So they liked you so well the first time they asked you to come back to the Marine Corps.
They didn't ask me. They told me. They delivered. Anyhow.
Well, you know, let me ask you, how did you get started yourself in shooting and hunting? What was your first gun?
My first gun was on my 8th birthday, a single-shot Winchester 22. Bolt action, you know. And it wasn't very long before I was deadly with that thing. Because I never took a shot over 4 feet. I was real good at stalking and had absolutely nothing but time. And I would sneak up on a bird or a rabbit. I had a very understanding parents, and they would let me go across. There was a bayou on our place, and on the other side of it was quite thickly wooded. And I could come in from school during the hunting season, take that 22 and a blanket and a little old mess kit, kill it, and practically nothing else, and go over there and come back Sunday afternoon. They would, you know, leave Friday afternoon, and I was on my own over there during that time. But I wanted to kill it and I was going to eat it. And I'll tell you one of those stories you might like. I brought in one time a cook. Everybody had cooks that did all their cooking for them those days. We had one that was a real jewel. But I brought in a duck. And I said, I want you to cook this for me. And she said, she looked at it, she said, I ain't gonna cook that thing. I said, yes you are, you gonna cook it and I'm gonna eat it. Yeah, well, I was 9 years old.
9 years old.
Yeah.
Right.
She said, no, I ain't gonna cook it. And I said, well, why aren't you gonna cook it? She said, I ain't gonna cook it because that ain't no duck. Its foot come out in the wrong place. But I said, all right, I'm gonna cook it. So I took it out in the yard, built a little fire, and I cooked it. And I bit into it, and I figured, well, maybe she's right. It wasn't no duck.
It wasn't duck.
I think it was one of those old dipples, we called it.
So
his feet come out straight back instead of down like a duck. But she said, ain't no duck, his foot's come out the wrong way.
Well, realize, of course, this was a somewhat different time from now, and of course, Bill Jordan grew up. From the first time he could probably walk and crawl, you were exposed to people hunting, and you learned gun safety probably before you could walk.
My father was a quail hunter and duck, and I went with him, you know, even before I was allowed to have anything. But I'd carry a stick like I was had a gun too.
So by the time you got around to actually getting a gun, well, you pretty much knew. How to.
At 8. I was turned loose with the gun. I knew enough about guns that they figured it was safe.
But of course, this was a different time, as today children are turned loose with video games at 8 and cartoons on television, And this was the real world back years ago. And of course in Louisiana, Bill Jordan is originally from Louisiana, as am I. And I know a little bit about those same conditions. I'm not quite in his seniority bracket, but I do have appreciation for.
Let me say one thing as a little interest. Bowie, Jim Bowie,
Yes, sir.
was born about 8 miles from where I was.
Oh.
No, I take that back.
Okay.
He lived there.
He
He was
lived.
born over in Tennessee or somewhere and came there as a very small child. And he lived at a little old place called Lloyd Bridge.
I didn't know that.
You don't know where it is? You know where it is, sure. That's where he came up raised.
Isn't that something? And of course, Jim Bowie, as all of us know from all sorts of things, he was a very colorful character. This part of the country has the distinction of being, shall we say, a colorful.
Friends, we hope you've enjoyed this interview with Bill Jordan, certainly as much as I have. You can get his books from the Police Bookshelf, Post Office Box 122 in Concord, New Hampshire. That zip code is 03302-0122. Now, they have an 800 order number, and that number is 1-800-624-9049. They also have many other books and writings that would be of interest to shooters and gun enthusiasts, but especially Bill Jordan's writings are so interesting and so entertaining, I know you'll really enjoy it. Now, friends, we sure want to remind you about our good friends at Shotgun News. Post Office Box 669, Hastings, Nebraska. That zip code is 68902. Their phone number is area 402-463-4589. For MasterCard or Visa subscriptions only, 1-800-345-6923. You know, Shotgun News is the trading post for anything that shoots, published 3 times monthly. It's just a terrific bargain place as well as marketplace for firearms. If you don't presently get Shotgun News, we'll make this next on your list. That 800 number again for subscriptions only for MasterCard or Visa is 1-800-345-6923. Friends, this is Johnny Rowland. We hope you've enjoyed this week's program, and we look forward to seeing you again next week on The Shootin' Show.